Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We have now come to the 7th session of this conference titled Cybersecurity and its Impact on Shipping, Ports and Logistics. Joining us virtually for the first presentation, we have Mr. Imed Ben Ameur, the Regional Chief Information Officer, Asia, Middle East and Africa of AP Moller Maersk, to speak on the backward integration in digitalization.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can see me and hear me well. If the moderator gives me a sign that all is okay.
Yeah, we can hear you, we can see you, Imed. Thank you.
Very good, very good, very good. Thank you very much for inviting me and for offering the time and the floor to share with you some of the, let's say, our thoughts or my thoughts on the cybersecurity, which is the top of agenda, I think, on all the industry leaders, and specifically in this industry, the maritime industry. Within Maersk, I think the focus on the cybersecurity has been extremely high for the last few years, and the focus and the attention and the vigilance is at the highest level as we speak, for various reasons, very obvious reasons, and I think all of you are aware of the overall, let's say, ecosystem challenges that we are going through, the political situations that is impacting the overall, basically all the industries and the business across the globe, and the maritime industry is not an exception, and the global shipping industry is also not an exception. So for today, I prepared a few slides just to really support the discussions and the interactions for the sessions, and I leave it to the organizers to guide me on how we want to take the question and answers. But I'll try to spend the first part of the sessions in maybe 10, maximum 15 minutes, just to share with you a little bit of insights on what I was planning to share with you and to walk you through today. So let me share my screen. Here you go. Just bear with me for a second, it's coming. Where's this? For some reason, I don't have the share screen here. Yeah, it's here. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see.
Good. Good. So, as I was mentioning, I think the topic is obviously one of the, it's probably the number one topic that we have on our agenda, not only within the tech function, but on the overall business agenda. But the obvious questions, and before I go into the details of what I was planning to share with you today, is the very obvious question that anyone may ask, especially the business leaders, is why cybersecurity is so important? Yeah. At least from my experience interacting with business partners and business colleagues, this is the first question that comes to mind. And if you don't clarify the purpose of why cybersecurity is probably the number one priority for any of the business, especially on these days, in these periods, and these circumstances, then we are not looking at it and we're not positioning it in the right way. The way I look to cybersecurity is basically one of the offers that we are offering to our customer. And for any successful business, if your customers will not trust you, then there is no point of going further or going forward. It's all about building that trust with the customer. And when I say building the trust with the customer, is offering them that peace of mind that you are taking care of their data, you are taking care of their operations, the continuity and the stability of their operations and their supply chain. That's for me the key words or the key message that would position the cybersecurity right on the agenda of any board or any, let's say, business agenda. And this is becoming more and more important and critical for a very basic and obvious reasons. And the first one that I want to highlight here is the continuous changing to the business models that we're observing in this industry, as well as all the industries around us. the increasing level of digitizations is bringing a new set of cyber challenges to this industry. And if you look back a little bit, a few years back, who were the key players in this industry? We may name them probably and count them on the fingers of two hands. What we observed over the last few years, there is new disruptors that are coming into this industry. Those disruptors, they are entering this industry with a completely different offering and a completely different way of running the business and doing the business. They own technology, they know how to run technology, they know how to mature technology, and they know how to leverage the benefits that comes out of the emerging technology trends. Maybe they don't have the assets that the industry has, they don't have vessels, they don't have cranes, they don't have RTGs, they don't have terminals, but they have the technology and the know-how to run the technology on these kind of heavy assets type of industries and environments. And we see some of them entering this industry over the last few years, and we see also some of them making some good progress and winning some market shares and taking their space in this environment. So they're coming with new business models, and coming with a new business models means predominantly built upon a very strong technology stack, means they're also bringing new standards for this industry that we need to follow and we need to adhere to and we need to catch up on. And bringing that technology dimensions, and stronger technology dimensions to the way we do the business, it's also coming with additional cyber challenges, cyber threats, cyber risks that comes with it. The other elements why the cyber security is becoming more and more important is the increasing, let's say, complexity of the cyber threats. The hackers and the cyber, let's say, risk generators, let me name it that way, they're investing billions in building more sophisticated tools and ways to attack any industry. And this industry, as I said, is not an exception. And we saw that, and we are observing that continuously, every day, every hour even, every minute, new ways of impacting any industry, in impacting the assets, in compromising the continuity of the operations, on stealing data, customer data, confidential data, strategic plans, and commercial data, basically. One of the I don't like to share a lot of numbers and these kind of discussions and interactions, but one striking fact that I read recently in some of the Gartner, let's say, studies, is highlighting the significant increase of the cyber threats. So over the last 3 years, we observed more than 350% increase in cyber events, which means on average, we are doubling the volume of cyber events and threats on a yearly basis. And whatever stands good last year is no longer relevant this year. And if we think that we are strong enough, that we are cyber resilient enough, based on what we built last year, probably that is already obsolete. And new techniques and new tools and new processes and new governance are needed to make sure that that resilience that we build in the organization and the business is still relevant and still valid. So with this in mind, what will be our answer to this? And I'm sharing here an overview of the approach that we adopted within Maersk to build our overall cyber framework. Basically, how we're going to protect the perimeters, how we're going to protect the assets that we're deploying, how we're going to protect the customer supply chain, how we're going to protect the customer data, how we're going to protect the people that we deploy on our sites and in our various divisions and business lines to do the business, to do the work that is expected from them with that peace of mind that everything is protected all around. So it's not there's many models or there's many standards. So I'm not claiming here that this is the best, but it's one of them. It's built upon an internationally recognized framework. It's used by the U.S. National Institute of Standards and Technology, the NIST. We also made sure that we retrofit it or made it more relevant for the context of our industry and our business. The logic or the aspiration and the ambition is basically to set a couple of defense lines. So the first line of defense or the first line of security is basically protecting the perimeter, protecting the business from the outside. But the second line of security or second line of defense is within the perimeter, within the space where we operate, within the space where we're deploying our assets, be it vessels, be it terminals, be it cranes, be it trucks, be it warehouses, all of them basically. All the assets that we're deploying to run the end-to-end supply chain on behalf of our customers. And this framework, as I said, it's very simple when you look at it, but it's very complex when it comes to deploying it, activating it, making it part of the DNA of the organization, making it the equivalent of the oxygen that every and each one of the organizations breathe so that this business can survive. There's no other choice. This has to be built as part of the DNA of any organization. And if we are not at that stage, then there's something missing. And we are not at the level of the resilience that we aspire for the business and for the business continuity of our operations and for the customer value propositions that we are offering. So this, what I call the magic circle, is basically, it starts by identifying the risks. That's the key word, risks. Cyber attacks and cyber threats will be always there. And I would be lying if you say any of the organizations is cyber risk free. I didn't see it anyway myself, not with Maersk, and I didn't see it also in my previous lives, be it in the oil and gas industry, be it in the fast-moving consumer goods, be it in the food and beverage industry. There is no cyber-free type of business or setup. Managing the risks, it's a way of anticipating proactively on what eventually can hit and would hit your business at any point of time. So identifying the risks, that's the first step. And that's the most difficult step. The second one is to protect the assets, is to protect the landscape, is to protect the business and protect the operations. And the protection part is planning. Protecting is planning. It's not reactive, it's again proactive. We identify the risks and we define what will be our responses to those risks. That's how we establish that first level of, again, protecting the assets and the business and the operations that you're running. The detection part is about threats. Continuously keep an eye on what's going on the space. What threats are emerging? We don't want to wait till the risk materializes. We want to also investigate and keep an eye continuously on what threats are emerging in the ecosystem and on the space where we are operating. It's a 360-degree approach. We look at all the sources. It goes from keeping an eye on the dark web. It goes to keeping an eye and partnering with the strategic partners, be it OEMs, to make sure that we are always one step ahead of the curve, ahead of the wave that eventually may hit us if we are not prepared for it. Responding, again, is having your plan, your tactical plan. How are you going to respond if the worst would happen, if the risks would materialize? And keep planning with the assumption that it would materialize at a certain point of time. If it happens, how are you going to respond to it? And having a plan to respond to a risk or an attack or an incident is part of the protection of the business. It makes a big, big difference to respond to a cyber attack or a cyber incident or accident within a few hours or responding to it within a few weeks or a few months. And we observe it in this industry and in other industries. Companies were extremely successful in containing cyber attacks, responding to those, and recovering their operations within hours. But we saw also cases where companies and operators, it took them months, and in some cases years, with a lot of millions spent to respond to those attacks and those incidents and to recover their operations. Meanwhile, there's big damage that happened. Damage on the reputation, on the brand, on the customer loyalty, on the customer trust, the point that I started with at the beginning of my presentation, and more important also on the people that works for those organizations. None of the let's say the colleagues or the teams that you have within the organizations will feel proud working for months, or feeling comfortable and proud working for months on recovering a business under a huge stress level. No one will feel comfortable being in that position. And the last but not least is the recovery part. And again, the recovery is the execution of that response plans. So the question that I think every one of us should ask, especially the tech leaders and the business leaders that we have in the room today, do we have cyber incident response plans? If you don't have it, maybe it's time to start thinking about it. Even if you think that you have built the strongest cyber, let's say, cyber protections, tools and systems and processes and knowledge and expertise, if you don't have a clear response plan in place that you can bring from the drawer, as I said, if an incident is there and they can execute in a very scripted manner, so you know exactly that that doesn't leave any confusion during the process of the recovery. If you don't have that, then there is something missing and that requires your attention. So recovery, as I said, is the last piece, yeah? And there's different steps behind that. I don't think that we have enough time to really elaborate more on the different steps for the recovery, but what, as I said, as I mentioned, and this is from personal real life experience, is the most painful part of the process. It's not a pleasant experience, and usually it definitely comes with a lot of damage to the business and to the morale of the troops deployed to support this business. I think it's extremely important to understand what type of cyber threats we have that this industry is facing these days. And it's important to understand this so that you can initiate that first step of the circle or the wheel that I was sharing in my previous slide about how to plan your risks, how to identify your risks. You cannot identify and plan for those risks if you don't understand what are the threats that you have to which you are exposed, basically. So there's many threats, but I try to summarize here the top, let's say, 4 or 5 threats that we observed impacting the maritime industry. Doesn't mean that this is an exhaustive list or a complete list. There are many others, but in terms of magnitude, in terms of frequency, in terms of likelihood, this is what we observed based on, again, some of the studies we did with Gartner, with KPMG, and some other cybersecurity professionals to identify what type of threats we need to be prepared for. The one that has the highest likelihood of impacting us or impact this industry. So the first one is about the supply chain attack. So one way of impacting your business is hitting your supply chain. So if an attack will block the operations of one of your vendors, it will impact you. That's very clear. And same also is valid for us when we look at it from the lens of our customers. If an attack will hit us and our business will go down or be disrupted, that will impact directly our customers. It will impact directly our partners in the overall maritime eco-industry, be it port authorities, be it shipping lines operators, be it forwarders, be it whatever, BCOs, etc., etc. So making sure that we have a tactical plan, game plan, war plan, as I call them, it's extremely important. And understanding that is even more important. The malware, the ransomware, and the phishing, these are, how can I say, routine kind of cyber threats, different techniques. However, we see when we observe it over the last 3 years, a significant increase using those techniques to compromise the setup, the tech setup of various operators in the maritime industry. It starts usually from an infiltration or from one of the weakest link in the overall ecosystem. It could be an end user. It could be an employee who's working from home and is not, let's say, is bypassing some of the controls that has been established within the corporate network. It may have different different sources, yeah? It could be a very simple phishing email that you receive in your mailbox asking you to click on a link or to open a PDF document to validate an invoice or to get an award or to celebrate or to congratulate you for doing something. Of course, the temptation is always there. You go quickly, you click on that button, and then the whole thing will spread across your network. And worse than that, and this is what we observe now as an emerging trend, most of these attacks are what we call the silent attacks. So the attacker will be inside your network and it will not bring anything, any signal to the surface. So it'll be sleeping on your network, going and spreading across all your servers, all your applications, all your databases, all your files. And it starts sending data out, start monitoring the transactions that are flowing and the data that is flowing on your network. And then, of course, whoever get that knowledge from the outside, he's basically getting all your processes, systems, network structure, security tools that you deployed in his or her hands. And then after that, he can basically dictate whatever he or she wants to impose as a way to get you to recover your business. The third one is what we call the state-sponsored advanced persistent threat, the APT, or the state APTs. This is a more global kind of threat that we are facing, especially with the crazy words we are in, with the crazy events that the overall world is going through, and we see more of this happening. So it's a kind of war between states, but it targets the strategic sectors. And the global trade or the maritime sector is a strategic sector for any country. If you want to hit a country, if you're going to impact in a negative way the stability of a certain country, the economy of a certain country, the social stability of a certain country, this is the area where you need to fire. The operational technology running on legacy systems. Let me take a couple of minutes here to elaborate a little bit on here. So I was referring to protecting or establishing the first line of defense and the second line of defense. So the first line of defense, this is basically your perimeter, making sure that there is no one is entering your perimeter. You're protecting the fences, basically. You're ring fencing your overall environment. But still you have threats inside. So what happens if, for whatever reason, you still have one weakest link in your perimeter and someone will manage to get through and he's inside? Having this, the risk that we'll be facing basically is twofold. One is it will impact your classic IT environment. So all your office work, all your databases, whatever, file sharing, emails, communications, corporate communication tools, etc., etc. But more important and worse than that, if it goes and impacts your industrial environment or industrial technology or operational technology, we call them OT, we call them industrial technology, and this is predominantly the automation elements or the automation part of your landscape, of your environment. You may have your server down, and you can eventually work in a manual way. But what if you have a fully automated cranes or fully automated trucks and they stop working? There's no manual alternative for that. There's no option. So the idea of focusing on the operational technology, especially in the maritime industry, is exactly to segregate the risk and to reduce the risk when the incident happens. It's finding and defining a certain network architecture that isolates your network in case of attack, that segregates different cells on your network so you can contain the attack or the infection in a small cell, and you isolate it from the rest of the network so that the rest of the network can continue to operate in a clean and a continuous manner. And you keep that infected, let's say, cell under quarantine, and then you deal with it. So instead of dealing with a huge spread of infection across all your network, impacting all your assets, we basically isolate that, segregate that, and then we treat it as a small cell that has been impacted within the overall network. Still, it's impacting the operations, because even with a small cell, you still have definitely direct impact on the continuity of operations. But at least it helps you in the time needed to recover. You can continue your operations partially with the let's say the clean part of the network, while your teams and your experts and specialists are working on the cleaning and recovering that contaminated cell. So those are I'd say the four top cyber threats that we observed as an emerging trend in impacting specifically this industry. So going a little bit now into a little bit more details, yeah? And I was referring to the risk-based approach. It all starts by understanding your risks and the planning for those risks. How are you going to respond to those risks? For that, there are some good practices that has been, I think, defined, not defined actually, I mean, aggregated by Gartner. So I'm referring here to some of the latest, let's say, studies and articles that has been released by Gartner. I'm sure that for the cybersecurity experts who are on this call today, none of these is new to you. Yeah, having a clear definition of who owns the cybersecurity agenda, who leads that, is part of defining those roles and responsibilities. But it's not only that. Cybersecurity is not the responsibility of the CISO or the Cyber Information Security Officer. That the role of the CISO or the cybersecurity teams is to put in place the frameworks, the governance, the processes, the tools to protect your business. But it's the responsibility of every and each one of the organization, starting from the board down to any one of the organization, anyone at the lowest level, let's say, in the organization. Each one has a role to play. Training and making sure that everybody understands cybersecurity, understand what his or her role is in making sure that the business is protected, the customer operations are protected, is extremely important. And training is not a one-time kind of initiative. It's not that way. It is definitely a continuous effort. It's a continuous journey, and there is no way how you can stop that. Incident responses, backup and restore of the data, making sure that you have a clear processes and policies and tools in place to better manage the inventory of the assets is of high criticality. And then insisting here on the assets inventory. If you don't have visibility on the assets that you are running, you cannot protect them. And if you don't have the tools and the processes to make sure that you have a continuously updated asset inventory, you are missing something. The network segmentation, this is what I was referring to, how to contain the risk when the incident happens, how to segregate your network, creating different cells, isolated cells, so at any point of time, if there's an attack, you can isolate very quickly the magnitude of its impact, and you can very quickly, let's say, disconnect that infected cell from the rest of the network, so you can partially continue your operations. The log collection and the detection, this is being part of the, let's say, the threat analysis and keeping a continuous eye on the near incidents. Sometimes you don't have an incident, but you can see that there is some trends, and these are captured in the logs that someone is trying to access your network. And there are tools and techniques today how you detect those kind of things. Someone is trying to decrypt some of the data that is flowing on your network. Someone or a source, let's say, or a program is trying to crack some of the passwords of specific users or administrator IDs, etc., etc. Patching is, I think it's very obvious. And patching is a daily routine job. It's a daily routine job. And it's not an activity that takes time. Let's say once in a month, we go and we patch our servers. If a vulnerability is known and it can be exploited immediately by the hackers. Again, there are tools and there are technologies available and products available on the market that helps the organizations in making sure that they have a clear and strong patching policy implemented. And I can share also with you some of the discussions that I had with some of my business partners within our organization. The challenge here is always about securing the maintenance windows, so we do patching. Patching sometimes requires downtime, and downtime means impact on your operations, especially if you're running 24/7 or you're running automated, let's say, terminals or assets. But my answer to that challenge, it's not a challenge, it's a dilemma. It's a very nice dilemma, and it's part of having this kind of co-ownership of the cyber agenda. Yeah? And my answer to them usually is, it's your choice. What do you prefer? losing a couple of hours of productivity, of operational productivity, or you lose the brand. You may lose for a couple of hours productivity and operational productivity because we have to take down servers, we have to do maintenance of tech assets, etc. Or you prefer to save those 2 hours of lost productivity, but when the incident happens, you lose the operations for weeks and months. And by that, you lose also the brand. Well, it's your choice. And I think the answer to this is very, very simple and obvious. I was referring again to the cybersecurity again is not one initiative or a project or a program. It's a continuous process. It's part of the oxygen that an organization needs to breathe and to survive. And I'm bringing this model. There's many models again on the market, but I'm sharing a model that I'm using, and I use and I'm still using to continuously assess and evaluate the maturity of my cybersecurity setup and framework and posture. So it lists what you see here, that this is basically the different domains or the tech domains or the security domains. And then we do an assessment of where we are in terms of maturity, in terms of relevancy of the processes and the tools and the technology that we put in place, in terms of the expertise that we build with an organization, in terms of the end users awareness, in terms of the techniques and the technologies that we deployed to protect the data and avoid data leakage, etc., etc. And what you see here, and I mean, just to highlight on the color coding here, this first part is basically what I use as a reference point. And I said, this is as an example, yeah, this is just for illustration, it's not real data. But this is my maturity as at cycle 0. And cycle 0 could be a couple of years, or my cycle for the assessment is a couple of years. So what was my maturity level on this critical asset management processes, for instance, or domain? I am at that stage now. So what's my plan for the next cycle, for the next couple of years? This is where I will be. And what I need to be at that level. What you see here on the gray, this is the investment that I need. Cybersecurity comes with investment. Let's not hide it. It requires significant depends on the size and the magnitude of what you want to deploy, but definitely cybersecurity comes with the need for certain investment. And this is exactly how you plan for that cycle of keeping that maturity at the highest level. This blue line that you see here, this is again some of the benchmarks that we use and referring to industry leaders. And here I'm specifically referring to the maritime industry. So this is where the maritime, let's say, industry leaders, they sit in terms of the maturity of their cybersecurity posture and setup. And it's very helpful. So you set for your own organization your plan. How am I going to reach this level? How am I going to be at par with my peers within this industry? If I am today at this level, and I know that I can go with what I have today to this level, but I still have a gap. This is what I need to invest, how much I need to invest, so I can go to this level. And the same thing would apply to all these dimensions. And I'm highlighting here a couple of points with those the red lines, yeah? So disaster recovery, I was mentioning part of that wheel of the cybersecurity framework. And for me, the obvious question is, if you don't have a disaster recovery in place, and if you're not testing your disaster recovery continuously, and you're validating that disaster recovery is still sound, how confident are you that you can recover after an attack? Just ask yourself that question. If you don't have a disaster recovery in place, or you're not testing it continuously and rigorously, and if you're not updating it continuously, then you are at risk. The incident response plan, it goes hand in hand with this. And as you can see, even in terms of benchmark within the industry leaders, this is where they put a lot of focus. Having a clear and strong incident response plan is extremely crucial and critical. The supply chain security, as I was referring to earlier on, it's important also that you look at your supply chain ecosystem. Are you validating with whom you're partnering? Who are your vendors? Are your vendors strong enough on the cyber front? Are your vendors and suppliers resilient enough and they can support you and guarantee that they will continue to operate and continue to supply you with whatever you need from them or you're sourcing from them, whether these are products or services, without any cyber risk? It's a question. If it's not there, maybe it's time to start thinking about it. Risk management, I think restating here the obvious, the whole approach is about risk. Anticipating the risks, understanding the risks, planning for the risks, and mitigating the risks. Those are the key, let's say, the keywords that I want to leave with you from this slide. And before I conclude and close the session and probably go for the Q&A, I want to leave the forum with this question. Don't want to comment on it. I think that we all should have the answers. If the answer is yes, I think you are on a good track and you are definitely contributing in securing the overall industry and the ecosystem around this industry. If the answer is no, or not fully, then probably there's something that needs to be done on this front. Thank you very much.